The puck's about to drop on a brand new season of NHL hockey, but the preseason coverage is just heating up on the latest episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. It's hump day, and we're breaking down the Metro Division 8 through 1. Let's tap in and let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Here we go, hockey heads. The time has arrived for the Wednesday edition of your daily source for fantasy hockey news, betting breakdowns, and everything out of the world of the NHL. Shout out to the everydayers. Thank you so much for holding us down and making us your first listen every single day on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I'm joined, as always, by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steele Roden. On this side of the microphone, it's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Place your first $5 wager and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Steele, we're going to get started ourselves here with a divisional breakdown that we do every offseason, and hockey is very, very close. We had our second Listener League draft last night. We'll talk a little bit about that perhaps next week because we got to get to business on these divisions because, look, having a feel for where teams are going to land is going to help guide you in terms of what fantasy pieces you should be paying attention to, looking at, or letting go. So, over to you, and I'll tease it up with this. Of all divisions, I think the Metro Division might be the easiest to project because I see it pretty clearly, but I'm excited to hear what you have to say because I know you're going to disagree with me, I think, a little bit on the New Jersey Devils. Over to you, my friend. Who are you looking at in the 8th spot?
I don't think I am going to disagree with you on the New Jersey Devils. It's pretty much the exact same way I had this division finishing last year, exactly the way they did finish at the end of the regular season. The only difference for me is I'm moving the New Jersey Devils all the way up to that 2nd spot, so you're getting that out of me right away. New Jersey Devils are up there at number 2, and I'm shifting everybody down at least one spot. So everything kind of remains the same except one spot down from where they were last year, besides at number 8, who I've got here is the Columbus Blue Jackets. And there's some obvious reasons why. Number 1, I think this team is going to be going through the motions. There's a lot going on with this organization right now. And obviously the loss of Johnny Gaudreau, as sad as it is, it's going to have an effect on this team. So that's number 1 because he was their best player going into this season and has been their best player over the last few seasons since he joined this organization. So that's number 1. They're going to be going through the motions. As sad as it is, it's just a factor in the equation. Number 2, this is also one of the youngest teams in the National Hockey League still. The only teams that are younger than them right now are the Utah Hockey Club, the Philadelphia Flyers, Buffalo Sabres, and Montreal Canadiens. Wow, so this is a team that is still very inexperienced. They do have a couple of veteran players on the team, Boone Jenner, but that goes into my third point. The inability to have their star players and best players be healthy. We saw Adam Fantilli obviously last year miss half the season. Boone Jenner missed more than 20 games. Zach Werenski has dealt with a numerous amount of injuries. They were banged up. One of the teams that lost the most amount of games played for men out there. So those are the 3 reasons why I have the Columbus Blue Jackets at number 8. And again, they just don't really have an offensive 1-2 combo punch right now. As much as we do like Adam Fantilli, as much as we do like guys like Kirill Marchenko, Zach Werenski on the blue line, Voronkov, Chinnikov as well. Yep. Again, inexperience as when it comes to the rest of this division. Those are the 3 reasons why I have them still at number 8 in the Metro.
First and foremost, a team, fan base, organization still going through a very tough time. So I'm going to keep this one short, sweet, and respectful out of respect for this fan base. Their time is coming. It's not now. It's coming, though. And there are some really intriguing pieces all over this lineup, even down to the 3rd line. Voronkov, Kent Johnson, a former top pick. They did really well. I know they brought in that Lidstrom kid. I think that was their top pick. Troy, hit us in the comments. The Troy, the vape god, will be there to hold us down. Adam Fantilli has breakout written all over him. Sean Monahan has underrated sleeper written all over him. He is going to be a player that I have my eyes on, a player that I drafted, I think with my last pick steal. I think he brings sneaky value. Troy, let us know what it is. That's the number 8 spot. Let's keep it tight here. Number 7, Philadelphia Flyers. This is a club that held down the 3rd spot in this division steal for a good portion of the year last year and really just fell off the table. They also went from being one of the more disciplined squads out there, playing smart, playing the way John Tortorella wants them to, not taking a ton of penalties, to being one of the more penalized teams in the league, getting sloppy. However, they come in at 7, but when I look at some intriguing young fantasy pieces, I actually look at these two teams very similarly, especially up front, Steele, for this Philly Flyers club. Tyson Forster, Matvei Michkov, Morgan Frost, Owen Tippett, even somewhat further down the lineup and deeper in formats, Bobby Brink. The blue line's a mess. We don't know what's going on in the cage. So they come in at 7 for me, but they still bring some intriguing fantasy value. And you know how I feel about Travis Konechny, their top piece. However, they got to be coming in at 7 only because of the teams ahead of them. And we'll explain that the rest of today's episode. Over to you, my friend.
Yeah. I also have, excuse me. I also have the Philadelphia Flyers at the number 7 position. I was close to having them at number 6 because let's not forget, like you said, they did manage to hold on to that number 3 spot for almost the first half of the season. They finished only 1 point behind the Pittsburgh Penguins, so this was very close for me. But I did end up going with the Flyers at number 7. I do like a lot that's going on in this top 6 forward group, like you said. Travis Konechny. I really like Matvei Michkov and Owen Tippett. I think Owen Tippett is definitely one of those guys, fantasy wise, underrated right now, and he could definitely have a breakout season offensively for this group if they can get that power play going as well. What worries me about this team is what you said exactly. What are we going to get out of Samuel Ersson? What are we going to see from Ivan Fedotov? So that's number 1 with me. Also on the blue line, besides Cam York and Travis Sanheim, who have been pretty good so far in their national career, that's not a top D pairing I would like to see for this group. And also Jamie Drysdale has not been able to stay healthy over the last 2 seasons. He's only played, let me get it up right here. He's only played 42 games in the last 2 years. So that's troublesome for me as well.
Yeah.
A bunch of injury concern. Like I said, Philadelphia Flyers are the 3rd youngest team going into this season. Inexperienced, but we do like that top 6 forward group of getting, like you said, Konechny, Michkov, and Owen Tippett, and the rest of those guys.
Take this in as well, Steele. How about the worst power play in the NHL last year? 12.2%. Clicking at that proficiency, worse than the Columbus Blue Jackets. I have serious concerns, and I think we can leave it at this with the Flyers. They overachieved and punched above their weight class for most of last season and then showed their true colors at the end. Once again, is the time coming? Is the needle starting to point back in the right direction? It is. That's what happens when you get bad. You bounce back and you build. But right now, the top and the toast of this division is so much clearly better that they come in at the 7th spot. Let's get this one in quick because you know it's tough for me to throw Sid at number 6 here, but I'm doing it. And you and I haven't even talked about our list, but I have a feeling they're going to be the exact same. Pens come in at 6. There's just not enough there for me in this team. I have concerns about Erik Karlsson's health. He still isn't skating. I know he was, and he should be back. I have concerns about the blue line. I got concerns about the bottom 6 forward depth. And I haven't even started to talk about Nedeljkovic and Tristan Jarry, which obviously bring their own concerns. There's value there for fantasy, of course. Malkin's look good in the preseason. Sidney, my favorite player in the game ever. Obviously a 90-point stud. Some sneaky good options. Brian Rust up front playing with Sid. That's going to be a valuable fantasy piece, I think. And I talked about Michael Bunting. However, just not good enough, Steele, to leapfrog some of these other teams in the division. So I could see them lurking for a wild card spot. I just still don't see it. I think they fall short, and they come in 6th.
I also have the Penguins. Like I said, this is going to be very similar to last year's list. The only difference is the New Jersey Devils go all the way from 7th to 2nd in my books here. Pittsburgh Penguins at number 6, just for the exact same reasons you said. So I'll pretty much leave it at that. I think the biggest worry for me with this team is in the crease. And that's a lot coming from me because I'm a big fan of Tristan Jarry, and I've been a big fan of him fantasy-wise over the last few seasons. But over the last 2 years, he really hasn't brought that value that we saw back in the 2021 season where he had a 919 save percentage. He was 34-18-6, a 2.42 goals against average, which I believe is the lowest of his career as well. So over the last 2 years, it's been a little bit difficult. Obviously, Pittsburgh has gone through a transition of sorts. like you said, that window for winning is closing for them. It's all if it's not
Rapidly.
closed now, it's almost
Yeah.
closed.
About to
But
slam
we'll leave it at
shut.
that. Penguins at number 6 for both of us.
Absolutely love it. I don't love it for Sidney Crosby and how I would like to see him
Your
go out with a bit of
boy.
a bang. He is my boy, most definitely. If it's not in blue and white, it's got to be Sid. Anyway, let's talk about the rest of this division. We'll talk about the Atlantic Division on tomorrow's episode. Then we'll head out west. And then hockey's back, baby. We'll have Monday waiver wire episodes, daily betting breakdowns. We get you guys in and out in 30 minutes every single day. That's what we do. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Steele and I use Gametime all the time for all of our favorite events in our area: comedy, theater, music. You know what it is, and soon to be NHL hockey. Make sure you're grabbing the newly updated and refreshed Gametime app. Curated deals to make it easier to find the best price on great seats. Super deals, views from your seat when you buy, and a lowest price guaranteed, including event cancellation protection and job loss protection. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Continue to hammer that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip it. I appreciate all that love you've been showing us throughout the offseason, throughout all this time of draft as well, mock draft Mondays, getting into the drafts as well. So thank you so much for all that love and support. We're going to continue this conversation, though, of this Metropolitan division. We're going to finish off, obviously, with who we have winning it, the best bets, and odds for each team at the end of this episode. Flip, over to you, my friend. I think, like you said, we're going to have the exact same list here. I've got the Washington Capitals at number 6. I hope you have the Washington Capitals at number 6. So I'll throw it to you, my friend.
Of course. I do. I also really do like their moves in the offseason. You and I have talked about this at length. It's been covered at length. Immediately, the duo of Charlie Lindgren and Logan Thompson becomes a very solid one. Not many teams in the NHL can roll out two guys that I think most squads would be happy to have as their number one.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying both of them are bona fide number ones, but that's just what the NHL game is like now. It's almost like you need 3 serviceable goaltenders and you just run with whoever gets hot. Cough, cough. Look at the Vegas Golden Knights. They have a banner because Aiden Hill and a carousel of goalies got it done only a couple of seasons ago. Anyway, the Washington Capitals come into this season, though, Steele, after getting absolutely dusted in the postseason to the hands of the team that's going to win this division again. And they looked completely out of their league. Steele, that would be like you running me in a 100-meter dash. It's not even going to be close, if you know what I'm saying. Big boy's a lot of things, but I'm not exactly swift of foot. The Washington Capitals have an opportunity here, though, with one of the best in the game in Alex Ovechkin now with a reinvigorated top 6. And I'm not going to say Andrew Mangiapane and Pierre-Luc Dubois overnight just make this team so much better offensively. One that really was awful last year, Steele, at the offensive end, only scoring more goals than the Kraken, Ducks, and Sharks and Blackhawks. So there still has to be hockey to be played. I like where they're going, and I could see them nabbing that final wild card spot in the Eastern Conference.
And we'll get to that later in this episode when it comes to playoff bets and playoff odds. I also have the Washington Capitals at number 6 for everything like you said. Obviously, it's very disappointing that we don't get to see TJ Oshie, Nicholas Backstrom both taking a step back from hockey to, kind of figure out their injuries and figure out where their future in their career goes from here. But we do like the moves. Andrew Mangiapane, Jacob Chikrin, Logan Thompson, Pierre-Luc Dubois, all those guys. It's going to be a difference maker for this team because, like we both have said over the offseason of talking about this team, they struggled to score offensively. Obviously, Ovechkin brought it on a little bit after the All-Star break last year, but this is going to be a difference maker offensively, even without those guys in Oshie and Backstrom. Number 6 for me as well. Number 5.
There we go.
New York Islanders for me come in at number 4. And again, it's pretty much the exact same list as last year. A team that just doesn't seem to make any moves, but somehow just like continues to be in that 4th or 5th spot in the Metropolitan division. I mean, the only guy they brought in this offseason was Anthony Duclair. And I actually really like that move, putting him in that top line, or at least the top 6 group with Bo Horvat, Matt Barzal, Brock Nelson, and getting him some good looks in that offensive group with those guys.
Yeah.
We like Noah Dobson. We expect, at least I expect, a bounce back season from Ilya Sorokin. You must expect a bounce back season because you drafted him yesterday in the 4th round. So you expect it as well. So for me, New York Islanders, this is one of my dark horse teams. I'm always
every year
make a move. They're going to make a move, not at the trade deadline, but they're going to make a move sometime in the playoffs. And it seems like, just again, the Carolina Hurricanes have their number every single time in the playoffs. They always seem to play the Hurricanes in the first round. They can't get by them. So hopefully it's a different matchup in the first round. Hopefully they can just somehow slay the beast if they can. But Islanders, 4th for me in the Metro.
3 things jump to mind right away when I think about this team. Number 1, Patty Waugh got a lot out of this club and was a big reason why they made a push and made a playoff spot last season. So a full offseason and full regular season of him behind the bench intrigues me. I have them at 4 as well, Steele. And I think, though, that leads into my second thought is the first thing that jumps off the page for the team is that the coach is going to be a big difference maker. That means that I am concerned about the lack of the moves for this roster. Anthony Duclair, after going to Tampa Bay last year from San Jose, I think it was something like 15 or 17 points in his final 20 games with Tampa. Very close. Yeah. Very close to a point per game player. He looked really good, but he was also playing with some very gifted offensive forwards in Tampa Bay that New York does not have. I still like it. I like the top line. It's improved. A little bit more foot speed, a little bit more talent. Let's see what they can do. They just don't have enough firepower, Steele. And that power, a penalty kill last year, dead last in the NHL, 71%. And if that's going to happen again, you're behind the 8 ball far too often, and you don't have the offense to come back. However, the third thing that jumps to mind, and thank you for alluding to it, our boy Ilya Sorokin, or maybe he's just my boy at this point because I'm invested in him. He is still deserved as one of the best goaltenders in the league last year. I understand the back surgery, the offseason recovery. I think it was back surgery, right? Back surgery?
Yeah. Yes, it was.
Thank you. And the poor performance up and down last year, his wishy-washy showing, that little short leash in the playoffs, he is still good enough. And if this team is going to go, it's going to have to be Sorokin. So I also see them hovering in there in a wild card spot. I got them at 4. Who you got at 3? And then let's talk about these New Jersey Devils a little bit after the break.
Well, at number 3, we both have it. Carolina Hurricanes come in the 3rd spot in the Metro. They are going to be a playoff team once again. This team, I think, made us both nervous after, the losses they had this offseason, losing Jake Ensel after trading for him, Brady Shea, Brett Pesce, a few other guys in that bottom 6 group as well, some new faces in the lineup, but they're still a tough team to play against. And Brind'Amour is one of our favorite coaches. He's got them dialed in and year out. And, even last year, going back to the playoffs, when that news was coming out that they, randomly in the playoffs, they were talking about not re-signing him. And then they ended up signing him to an extension, 4 days later. It didn't make any sense. It was weird timing, but he's the guy. And he has been the guy for a long time in Carolina. They love him out there. So number 1, Brind'Amour is one of the best coaches in the National Hockey League right now. I also love this top line. Sebastian Aho is one of the best centermen in the game right now at 25, 26 years old. Seth Jarvis, he's coming up, and you've been talking about him for years. So you love him. We love him out there, Seth Jarvis. I really like Svechnikov, and I know he's been one of those guys. He was on the, we talked about him on that high risk, high reward episode.
Sure.
And he is high risk, high reward because he hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's missed lots of games over the years. But he is also one of those guys who can fill out all the peripherals you're looking for. And I really like him. I'm putting a lot of faith in him to stay healthy and produce. I've got him at 70-plus points this upcoming season if he can stay healthy. So I love that top line. It's a different-looking blue line with those guys they lost. But, I'm very excited for this team. It's also a matter of fact if Frederik Andersen and Pyotr Kochetkov can stay healthy as well, because that's been a struggle for them as well in Carolina.
Look at us giving some love to a couple of bench bosses here in Patty Waugh and Rod Brind'Amour, but agreed. And thank you for bringing that up because that's just a fact. I love what Rod Brind'Amour is able to do with this group. And I look at the left side D pairing or left side D men, Slavin, Orlov, Gostisbehere, pretty solid still. And this is a team that hangs its hat in the defensive end, and I still like both Kochetkov and Anderson in the cage. So when you're talking about defense and defensive metrics, obviously we're a little bit concerned about what the offense is going to do without Gensel. This is a club steal that last year, and you've heard this one out of me before, and I just want to bring up the exact number. Shots against per game in today's NHL, the Carolina Hurricanes held opponents to 25 shots against per game. In today's run and gun NHL, that doesn't even make sense. I had to clean the fog out of my glasses. So if this team can do that once again, that defense is good enough to be in the mix for a top 3 spot in the Metro. That's where they come in. Let's talk about the top 2 right after the break.
Yeah. New Jersey Devils, New York Rangers, you know who it is coming in the top 2 spots this upcoming season.
Sure.
You've got it here on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. All of that and more coming up next, as well as future division breakdowns for the National Hockey League. But this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-plays, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate that. Flip, over to you, my friend. You already alluded to it. We've got the New York Rangers at #1. We got the Devils at #2. But what's the reason why of having those clubs finish where you have?
We spoke about this now at length. The masterclass of front office moves put on by Tom Fitzgerald over the past couple of years to build this roster out for the New Jersey Devils deserves some love. And the final piece in his puzzle was the blue paint. And he brought in Jake Allen and he solidifies it with Markstrom. And look, there's a lot of new faces in the mix, including Dougie Hamilton, who missed a lot of hockey. And that doesn't always immediately translate to success, Steele. There's a new coach behind the bench. Everything feels awesome for this team, and I'm going to stand by them at #2. But there is also that little bit of the New York Rangers have been together and winning in the postseason. They've been close to a Stanley Cup, knocking on that Stanley Cup final door, and they do have a more complete and experienced roster. So that's point #1. But in terms of the New Jersey Devils, fantasy hockey gold mine, Jack Hughes, if he can stay healthy, he's a top 10 scorer in this league, hands down all day. But when I look at the blue line moves, and this is what entices me and intrigues me the most, Pesce, Dillon into the mix now with Nemec, and Hughes will be back, in Dougie Hamilton. On paper, at least, Steele, that's got to be the best blue line core in the NHL. Will stats follow? Will success follow? That's what we're going to find out very, very shortly. But in terms of on paper, that's got to be the best, most complete blue line in the game. And that's the kind of thing that wins championships. And I really do think this team is going to be a force to be reckoned with all season long, right there on the heels of the Rangers for first. And you're on mute, brother. He's
Once
back.
a week. We know how it goes.
At least you're out of the way now for this week.
Out of the way. Got me again. But look, you couldn't be more right about this team. Look, they still got to go through the New York Rangers, but they are the second best team in the Metropolitan Division. Everything that Fitzgerald has done over the years to really build this team around those top tier guys, and Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, obviously getting the most out of Jesper Bratt right now. Dougie Hamilton in the mix. You draft Luke Hughes, who's going to come back from injury after a 3 to 6 week recovery session. But yeah, they bring in Timo Meier a few years ago. He's dealt with some injury. You're hoping some spark will come this year as well from Dawson Mercer, who's shown potential. Right. But it's really those guys this offseason and Markstrom, Brendan Dillon on the blue line, and those guys to really fill in those gaps of what this team really needed. Injuries obviously play a huge part in this because Jack Hughes has missed time. You got to definitely think about the age on Jacob Markstrom, but you've got two really solid goaltenders in Markstrom and Jake Allen. They come in at #2, but they are not #1 because the New York Rangers come in at #1. They are going to win this division. They're going to win this Metropolitan division. I'm going to get the odds up right now. Division for the Metropolitan. They actually come in with the third best odds, not the first. Devils at +220 to win this division. They are the top team. Carolina
Spicy.
Hurricanes are even ahead of the Rangers as well at plus 260. And then the Rangers at plus 290. And then you don't even see a team until the Islanders at plus 1,000. So those are
that's not
considered
happening.
the top three. Yeah, those are considered the top three teams, but the odds right now are in our favor if we've got the Rangers in that top spot.
Vegas must be reading and listening to some of our content, Steele, because obviously they're drinking the devil's Kool-Aid as well. Look, the New York Rangers have the best goaltender in the NHL. And, we can have the conversations about fantasy. Igor Shesterkin's the guy. And I love this goaltender. And then you mix in Adam Fox, Trouba, and then a supporting cast of Keandre Miller and others. And you haven't even gotten to the forward group with a guy like Alexis Lafreniere ready to absolutely bust out. This is going to be a very hard team to play against, Steele. And they have to be the division favorite. Plus 290, it's catching some money of mine tonight. 100%. That's a bit of a joke.
Love it.
Look, Carolina and New Jersey, they're going to be in the mix. I'm not saying like this is way out in left field, but the fact this is what happens with bets, and I'm so thankful that this is back. This is an angle that needs to be exploited. In a week's time, Steele, that number will move with a couple of big bets coming in on the Rangers, and then the value will erase quickly. However, the Rangers will be the team at the top of the table in this division and probably the conference once again. And look, they're going to have to get it done in the postseason. We'll talk about that. That's a whole other ball of wax. However, Rangers number one, followed closely by the Devils and Hurricanes.
Absolutely love that the bets are back in business on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. We're getting after it here. Make sure you're tuning into all of our episodes throughout the next week for all of our division breakdowns. Atlantic coming up next. Then we'll get over to the Western Conference for the Central and the Pacific Division breakdowns, best bets, and who we have finishing atop of that division. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. For your second listen, please go enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. From both Flip and I, we wish you good luck with all of your fantasy hockey drafts this upcoming week. If you haven't drafted already, good luck with all of your bets, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.